Do you believe that homosexuality is a choice?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Well, who would choose to who would choose to have to deal with the social stigmatization and just the, I mean, you know, it's not a choice that anyone would make. It doesn't make any sense to assume that it's a choice. There's so many social repercussions of it. Makes it extremely unpleasant to be a gay person. So, no, how could it be a choice?
I guess I'd want to answer that with a kind of a question back. Given what it's like, even today, you know, that kids get thrown out of their families, people get thrown out of their churches, there is discrimination, you can be a victim of violence. You have less civil rights, fewer civil rights, whatever is the right way to say that. There are still, even though things are better, there are still as many as half of the population who would vote against you. It seems insane to say to somebody that they chose to be gay.
Many people believe that it is not a choice because, in reality, who would choose to be gay? The life of a gay person is much more difficult than that of a heterosexual person because they are still not seen as equals. Even most people who are against it, those who fight for reparative therapies, don't think it's a choice. There are other theories as to why it's caused, some focusing on nurture, some on nature, but none of these are generally accepted. These range from the childhood trauma theory, which states that homosexuality is caused by abuse or other trauma in childhood, to the theory that it is a learned behavior. Others still think that it is caused by biological factors. In 1973, the American Psychiatric Association, or APA, dropped its classification as a mental disease as it was not supported by science. Many say that the causes of homosexuality are irrelevant.
Do you believe that there's a cure?
Well, no, once again. I mean, you know, we find homosexuality in animals throughout the animal kingdom. You know, even bugs can be gay. So I find it, you know, if it's not a choice, then you certainly can't cure it.
A cure. Well, cure is what you do for illnesses or things that are problematic, or so. I would say I don't know that it needs to be cured, although I understand your question. I think there are those who, because of typically religious viewpoints or religious beliefs, their faith tells them that their sexual orientation, that is to be homosexual, is to be making a sinful lifestyle choice. So they want to not be guilty. I think so they often look for cures. I think they can. Just like people can be in denial about a lot of things, that if there's enough religious pressure or enough desire to believe, that people can live in denial about their true sexual orientation. But I don't think they can actually change it.
Some think it can be cured, some think it can't. In Change of Heart, my 2 years in reparative therapy, Ben Newman talks of how his wife caught him in more and more lies and how she would leave him. He was not nervous about the therapy, but more about his failing marriage. After working with therapist Matt, he, quote, cures himself of his homosexuality. In Straight Like Me, a reparative camp called Love in Action run by John Smith is investigated. Former ex-gays look back on how totally brainwashed they were, and the restrictive lifestyle they were forced to live by. Love in Action is one of a long line of reparative and reorientating camps, mostly religious. This kind of therapy has been discredited by almost all American counseling agencies, with the APA saying there is simply no sufficiently scientifically sound evidence that sexual orientation can be changed.
Do you think the perception of homosexuality has changed in the last 20 years?
Oh, certainly. Certainly. It's all out, you know, it's out in the open. People have to deal with it. People have to be confronted by it. It's not something that can be ignored, and when people stop being able to ignore something, they have to deal with it.
Environment in our society today is more open, more accepting, more tolerant at least.
In the last 20 years, since the 1990s, such things as Don't Ask, Don't Tell have been passed and repealed, and Proposition 8 took away marriage rights for the gays in California shortly after they were given them. Civil unions and marriage equality for gays have been seen in more and more states, and only a 1% majority of the military think that openly gay service members shouldn't be allowed to join or be in the military at all. Research shows that Americans, on average, are becoming more liberal in their ideals towards blacks and women, and that this is starting to be extended towards the gay public as well. This can be explained by a few things. First, the more educated people are, the more liberal they are in their ideals and accepting they are to the idea of homosexuality. Second are shifts in cultural ideology.
Do you see any big changes in the near future, especially in light of the Occupy movement?
Well, I mean, we've already just gotten, Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal. That's pretty impressive. But it's like the last disenfranchised group of people. Human rights keeps expanding and expanding in this country, and now, this is like the last threshold of people who are getting screwed because of things that are out of their control. So, the social momentum is with them, and people, instead of getting all riled up about, the gays are getting married, which was all the rage in 2004. That's how Bush got reelected, was the gays are getting married, we have to stop them. Now people have important things to worry about, like how am I going to feed myself?
I'd really like to be optimistic, but when I listen for the voices of my enemies, or the enemies of the things that I believe in, like, not extending the privilege, for example, of marriage. Right now it's a privilege given to straight people. It's not a right. If it were a right, we would have access to it. But when I listen to my enemies, the voices I hear are speaking in terms of religion and belief and faith. And I think religion is a real powerful thing and is really important in a way in this country that maybe it's less so in some others. So I think that religion, not so much Christianity or faith, but religion seems to be a big, an enemy of gay people and their rights. And so I don't know that I see that changing much.
The church preaches that men and women are fundamentally different, if complementary, that you cannot find what you want from one in the other. For the church, sex is not a form of fun or release as it is in the 21st century, but rather the means by which humans reproduce. While the church fights for the civil rights of people whose orientation is homosexual in countries where they are persecuted, it does not fight for people who act on these homosexual urges. It argues that, quote, homosexual temptation, just like any other illicit sexual temptation, should not be acted upon. This same rule is applied for everyone who cheats on their significant others. Sexual temptation does not excuse the action in the eyes of the church. There's a problem with this, though. The church has been lax in their enforcing this ideology among heterosexual followers, but not so with homosexual followers. This inequality is also seen as a sin, but that does not change what the church teaches on homosexuality. In 2005, many were outraged when the Vatican released a statement on how strongly they felt about homosexuality when Canada was considering legalizing such unions. This is a much growing and changing topic, and there are many ideas about it. Every person has a different opinion, but slowly, homosexuality is becoming more and more accepted.